Today we're exploring why employee events go beyond the party planning committee stereotype. We're talking with Kourtney Hernandez with the mattress company Purple about leveling up your events.
Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com. Welcome, everyone. Today, we have a special guest from one of the most innovative comfort technology companies in America. That's right, Purple, the bedding and mattress company, home of the one and only Purple Grid. I actually have one of their pillows, and I can tell you from personal experience, this isn't a paid plug. I'm just going to tell you disclosure there, but it's awesome. I love that pillow. Joining us today is Kourtney Hernandez from the HR team as we explore. Okay, let me do that sentence again. Sorry.
You're going to have to give like a full second before you start.
Okay. Yeah. See, I told you I'm the one that messes up. So, joining us today is Kourtney Hernandez from the HR team, and we'll be exploring the impact of engaging employee events and how to level up your own team building activities. So, Kourtney, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We're super excited to hear more about Kourtney. She now leads employee experience initiatives at Purple. A skilled events and communications specialist, she's made her mark at Purple by planning celebrations for over 2,100 attendees, launching the company's largest corporate values event, and designing recognition platforms that elevate employee engagement. Kourtney is also a proud mom of 2 kids, 1 angel baby, sorry about that, and a very old cat. Married to her best friend Esteban since 2016, she's grateful for a partner who supports her personal and professional goals. So thank you for that genuine bio about you. And again, sorry about your baby that you lost earlier this year. That is just, it's so hard.
We're so
sorry.
We're praying for you and your family.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
But we are excited to have you. And we haven't had any topics about events. And I think this is something that every company does in some form or another, maybe not 2,100 employees, but in some way or another, most companies have events, and it's a crucial part of a business. And I'm excited to hear more about how you've made those successful at Purple. So, but first off, we want to hear a little bit about you and your background. So where did you go to high school?
Yeah, so I went to 2 different high schools. I started high school at Zama American High School, which actually is located in Tokyo, Japan. And I finished high school in Huntsville, Alabama at Grissom High School. So that's kind of all over the world a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And so you mentioned earlier that you are a military brat. Right?
Yes.
I love that term. It's
that kind of explains that.
So that's why you've been all over the place.
Yeah, my dad served in the military for about 30 years. And so I was along for the ride for all of that. We kind of moved about every 2 years of my life. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What branch of the military?
Yeah, he was in the Army. And so, yeah, we really enjoyed that as a family, and it definitely opened my eyes up to lots of different cultures and people, and I don't regret it at all. I loved it.
Well, thank you to your dad and your whole family for your service, because I know that's a team effort and sacrifice and very important. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for being here today. We're excited to dive more into the events. I mean, we're not just talking about a cheap pizza party kind of as an afterthought type of a thing. So let's start off with this question. How do employee events contribute to company culture and profitability at Purple? Because there always has to be an ROI. We're not doing this just for the feel good. There has to be a business component there as well. So Yeah, tell us how they contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually really love that you brought up the pizza party thing, because I feel like that is what people think of initially when they're like, oh, company events, like you're not going to lure me or keep me here with pizza parties. And I'm like, I have never thrown a pizza party. Like that's the last thing that I would come to my brain. And so I love that, actually. So yeah, company events, they are one of the best retention efforts I think that a company can have. And I think it's pretty common knowledge these days that it's a lot less expensive for a company to retain an employee than to hire and onboard someone new. And so the things that we do and host annually and have become like part of our calendar every year are traditions now. We have these annual summer events that our employees have come to expect and love, and their families expect, and they know, oh, like Purple always does something for us in the summer, and that's something that they anticipate and love. And that really brings this sense of community. And I think more than just events, it's community that we're trying to build. And I love that it's become like, instead of, party planners is maybe what it used to be called. It's, culture and experience is kind of what the titles have shifted to, because that's really what it is. It's the workplace experience, because you're not there just for a few hours, you're there for the bulk of your day. And so what is your experience at work, and how can we make your day-to-day experience feel enjoyable, and not just like I'm giving you a piece of cold Domino's pizza and saying, don't leave to that better salary, it's building that community that really matters and retains employees.
Yeah, and those titles really are, I think the reason we've shifted to that is because it shows the why behind those roles, right? It's to have a greater experience for the employees. So it totally makes sense that they would head that direction with the titles.
Yeah.
And I would think to be more purposeful too, instead of just talking about, hey, I'm in charge of planning an event. The focus isn't on just doing this thing, but it's about doing this thing for a purpose to help people feel connected and help them feel more tied to the company as well in a positive way. I really like that you mentioned anticipation of how both the employees and their families look forward to things. Krista and I have talked about this with our own family of like planning a vacation or an activity or something, and it gives you something to look forward to, both for us and for the kids. And I think that definitely applies to the workspace, where having something really exciting to look forward to, it's just this positive thing that you anticipate.
The anticipation is part of the experience, I think. It is like its own event. And for our kids, it's almost like the more exciting part of the whole experience is just anticipating it. And yeah, and actually, go ahead.
No, I think that anticipation is the first step of planning an event too. Is I like to ask, what is it that you guys want to do? Because like I don't pretend to know what everyone's thinking. I can get feedback at the end of an event and say, what did you think? What would you like to do next year? But they may have a different idea. And so, getting that feedback at the end of the event and saying, okay, what is it you guys want to do next year, is prepping me for the next year. And that's all, adding up to that anticipation for next year and getting them ready even before they're even thinking about it. So
yeah, definitely. And one of my favorite self-help books, it's called The Happiness Advantage. And one of the main takeaways I got is the importance of having something to look forward to. And that's just with happiness in general. But when you want employees to be happy in your workplace, having something within the workplace setting that they can look forward to, it not only keeps them there, retains them, and saves the company money, but it keeps them happier to be there, which means they're more productive employees.
Yeah,
people happier too. we have a caring side and we have a money side, but they need to both be there. So
Yeah, and we know that, not all events are created equal. You've got smaller scale events that are more team based. You've got larger company wide events. You've got different types of budgets that are allocated to different events throughout the year. So tell us how you've used employee feedback to shape better events at Purple.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love feedback. It's my favorite. And because like I said, I don't pretend to be the perfect planner or know exactly how everyone feels. I have definitely learned over this year. So I've planned 4 large summer events over my time at Purple. Um, and I want to say every year we get a couple similar feedback. And the primary one is backtrack. We used to take everyone to Lagoon every year. So that's like the local amusement park, right? And everyone still really wants to go there. So that's always the first feedback that we get, which we always kind of laugh about, is we're like, I want to go to Lagoon. And then that's just not gonna happen anymore because we're just too big of a company to take everyone there.
Yeah.
And so, but we used to be a much smaller, so it was a lot more, it made more sense. And so that's the first amount of feedback we get. So we're kind of like, okay, throw that out. And then we kind of keep going. And but it's interesting to kind of like, you find the other trends in feedback. So you find the things like people typically complain about a couple different things. You're like, okay, it's temperature, lines, and you kind of have to like wade through the things that you're like, I didn't have any control of these things, like the weather. And then you find other themes and you're like, oh, that is actually something I could have controlled. I could have foreseen these things, such as communication lines, timing of when they were informed. One really cool piece of feedback that actually changed the cadence of types of events we do was someone was like, I really like that we have family events in the summer, but I didn't really, like, as a person that doesn't have kids, I wanted to hang out with my coworkers and I didn't really get to because they were really focused on their kids. And I was like, that's really interesting, because I hadn't considered that, because I'm also a person with kids. So I'm like, oh, kids, it's fun, families. And so now we changed the cadence of summer is our family event and winter holiday is our employees only event. And so we're kind of catering to that, but that piece of feedback really stuck out. And we listened to that. I really do care about what our employees are saying. And so you kind of have to find those gems within those little things that, people are saying. You're like, I'm so sorry, it was really hot. It's the state fair. Like, what are we going to do about it? And so I think those things can really shape a lot of what you do as an engagement person at your work, is just finding those trends and then seeing, okay, step back. What is it? What is the root of what's here? They want to connect more with the people they work with. How can we accommodate this without taking away that people do want to bring their families? So we're accommodating the family aspect, but we're also finding a way that people can still connect with their coworkers outside of work. So that was something that I took away from that. So yeah, that was one thing I really loved about that feedback. But yeah, there's so many things. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I brought this up in my bio, was this huge Values Week event that we just did. And something that's really interesting about this is this week-long Values Week event, and it was this huge hit at our company. And a lot of people don't know this, we actually did Values Week last year too. And I can tell you probably maybe 20 people know that we did that. And all those people are in HR because it did not go over well for a couple of reasons. We did not have executive buy-in. We did not have a budget. And I also think we just didn't have the right communication lines for it. So I had an event planned for every day, bring over, different things. And we had maybe 5 to 10 people show up for each event. And I just like to call that our soft launch. But I took that and I was like, okay, well, that's not how I wanted that to go. And this year I was like, okay, I've got to learn. And so I took that and I got some more anecdotal data from it. And I think I mentioned to you guys before. I went up and I asked people, hey, why do you never come to my events? and I talked to someone who was like, well, and he's a really nice person. he's in analytics and they typically don't come to events because they're very busy. And it's like, well, if they're over an hour, we're definitely not coming. He's speaking for his department, right? We're definitely not coming. I'm like, okay. What was the other thing he said? We're not super social. So if it requires too much like interaction with other people, that's going to be hard pressed. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. And he's like, and we have a lot of like tickets, like we've got a lot going on. And so from that, I took like, it needs to be timely, it needs to feel relevant to them, to feel like they, actually want to get up from their computer and go do whatever it is. And so I think that for this second go round at Values Week, I took that critique and I was like, all right, all of our events, less than an hour. They're going to be something that everybody wants to get out of their seat and go do. We got executive buy-in. I had a significantly larger budget because I asked for it this year in our annual budget. And the one piece that I would do for this following year is I'm going to choose a different month because it was at the end of the quarter. So there were some groups who were like just slammed with like finances and other things. And that was my one thing that I was like, hey, participate. And they were like, we can't. So that timeliness was a little bit tricky for them. So it's all about that feedback.
Yeah, I love how you talked about some pieces of some pieces of feedback that you didn't have control over, some that you did. You took direct action on the things that you could control, and you had that personal touch to be able to go talk to people. In addition to, the more larger scale feedback of looking at surveys, post events, like all of that takes a lot of effort and commitment to do that. One thing that I learned that I think was kind of interesting at a previous company, I helped contribute to some events, surveys and feedback as well. And one of the interesting learning points was we had everyone rank about 10 different events from most favorite to least favorite. And that one was incredibly insightful because we knew the cost of the different events and they were not equal.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Some of them were
very insightful.
Some of them were a lot more expensive than the others. And there was one event that took very little planning and it was exceptionally cheap. And it was in the upper rankings of favorites. And so we're like, holy cow, I mean, we could do that same event multiple times. It doesn't have to be a once a year thing. If you love it that much. And then you start thinking about, okay, so there's like happiness per dollar. Abstract concept of, well, if this is at the top and we're spending X number of dollars and this one's at the bottom and we're spending X number of dollars, you can kind of count each person as one unit and calculate, happiness units as a percentage on the dollars you've spent. So as much as it can be quantified, like obviously you were able to see you spent more, you got a lot more people there. You could try to go back and calculate dollars spent by number of attendees and satisfaction score, dollars spent, number of attendees, satisfaction score, and create some type of a ranking system of performance on events. And then I think that helps get that executive buy-in when you want to try something new too.
I think there's so many variables there, because it was, there was that executive buy-in, and there was like a visual aspect. The first time around, it was probably hard to tell that it was anything going on. The second time around, decorated the entire office. You could not walk in without realizing there was something going on. So I was like, I don't want anyone to be able to walk in and be able to just go straight to their desk without like bumping into like a balloon arch or something. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I loved what you were saying about last year's Values Week, what things you didn't have, and then now what you had this year, what made it successful, and that was having executive buy-in, having a budget, and what was the third? Let's see. It was communication lanes. Yeah, having better communication awareness of it, and so I think those are very key.
Yeah, and even then there's improvement in those things. Like, we did feedback forms on them. People were like, I wish I would have known a week before, so I could have blocked out more time on my calendar to spend more time in the events. Because we kind of were like, surprise, it's Values Week. And so there's improvement, and I want to improve that even more. So there's more participation. And like I said, I just want to soak in all the feedback. I love it.
Yeah, feedback is huge. So how do you strive to maintain equity of time and budget when events need to be different for different groups? Like, for example, you are a hybrid employee, so you're sometimes at home, sometimes in the office, and you have some variance with employees that way. So how do you manage that?
Sure. Yeah, and Purple is interesting in that we do have a manufacturing wing as well, and a retail wing. And so there's a lot of different pieces. And so it's just planning. I think I do have separated budgets for different groups, and we created something called an engagement committee that we meet and we plan. And I'm saying, this is how we're going to do it here in Lehigh. How are you guys going to implement something similar that achieves the same goals, but it's going to make it work for manufacturing? Because we want them to have a similar experience. It doesn't have to look the same, because it can't.
Yeah.
They can't throw this huge week-long thing where everybody just stops making, the product, because it will get, it'll make the business stop. But they can do similar things. And so it just takes a lot of planning in advance, but we do separate the budget out. And so I look at thankfully, I have a lot of visibility into my budget in advance, which I love. It didn't always look that way, but this past year was actually the first year I could see my entire budget, which I love, love, love. And so I could say, okay, this is how much is allocated towards your group. And we have the engagement committee out in Georgia, and they're like, okay. And I'm pretty much give them free range as long as they understand the goals and objectives, and they make it work for them. And then same thing with our retail arm. I said, hey, I gave them kind of an outline. This is what I would like Values Week to look like for retail. How do you want it to look? And we kind of came up with a game plan. And the same thing, I allotted money to them. And so I don't think it's a great idea to just dictate every little detail, because it just can't look the same. But I do think it's important to not just like hoard all of the money for HQ, because every employee wants to have that same experience of feeling like they matter and feeling like they belong. And actually, one of our corporate values is community. And we have like one of those little fun blurbs and taglines, and it says, we believe that when people feel like they belong somewhere, their best ideas emerge. And I really believe that. And so as we keep building that community, we're going to keep getting better work and productivity from people.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think allowing there to be some equitable differences makes a lot of sense, because, yeah, you have to be mindful and be a realist of the different realities of business. And every business is a little bit different. And where you've got manufacturing and retail and corporate office, those are distinctly different environments. So maybe as we're kind of getting to the end here, if you have any more like advice specifically for how you've leveled up involvement of remote team members, or how you've catered specifically to some of the retail or manufacturing, like just give us some of your advice of things that you've seen specifically make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things this time around for remote that I was really trying to focus on was finding some of those virtual experiences that could bring those hybrid teams together. So for this Values Week, I keep referring back to this, but it was a really cool event, was that we did do a virtual escape room that was available for remote and in-person teams. Anybody could hop on, and it was a really cool company that basically hosted a web app, and you could hop on and you had to do like puzzles and clues together and escape a Zoom room.
Cool.
It was really, really neat, and people really liked it. It was really hard. I didn't have to do it. I just was like, have fun, everybody, and I was just kind of like running. But people really enjoyed that event, and I think that was a great way to connect groups that are hybrid, and with a little competition thrown in there. And so that was a really cool thing. And just like finding things outside of the box. There's so many tools and resources out there just like waiting to be utilized. And I think that's one good thing that came out of COVID is like way more resources for remote people and teams. We do have probably 200 to 300 remote employees. So it's not a small group. And they matter just as much as everyone else. And so I'm probably going to challenge myself more next year to find even more ways to incorporate them. But another way we do reach out to our remote employees is, so I mentioned those 2 summer events that we do. So we have a big one in Georgia. We have another big one here. But we actually send out a stipend to all of our remote employees. For like X amount of dollars plus a certain amount of money for all of their dependents so that they can go out and do something in the summer with their families. So that they don't feel like, oh, just because I don't live in Utah or Georgia, I don't get to go do anything fun on the company's money. So that's something cool that we do at Purple that I've never actually really heard of any other place doing. So we send it out in like a gift card basically. And they say, oh, we're going to go to Mount Rushmore. We're going to go to wherever. And that people really appreciate that we do that. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think the general theme I'm getting is that you don't use the differences in a company to give excuses or justifications for why you might not cater to everybody, right? You're just doing your absolute best to cater to everybody in the ways that you can, and in ways that keep the business moving forward. And I have loved hearing about how purposeful. It doesn't work very well. That's hard to say.
Attempts.
Purposeful.
That's cute.
with your feedback and just keeping that effort moving forward and trying to keep as much community and engagement with all the employees that you can. And I think everything you shared with us is very actionable for our listeners, and I'm excited for them to hear it.
Yep, definitely.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you for your time today. And sorry I cut you off.
Yeah, any final words before we wrap it up, Kourtney?
No, I'm just really excited. This was awesome, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me, and I'm just so happy. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you as well, Kourtney, and everything you shared. And to everyone listening, make sure to follow the Culture Prophet and leave a review. We appreciate it. See you guys.
Thanks, Kourtney.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Prophet podcast and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mobrium.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit mobrium.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.